even irresponsible, to bring them to a civilian court to stand trial just blocks from where the World Trade Center stood. The backlash has begun. We're keeping them honest tonight. Also ahead, raw politics, Sarah Palin's version of the 2008 campaign and much more. An early look at her new book and the controversy it's already causing. And later, a 360 exclusive. Never before seen photos and recordings of Charles Manson. Convicted killer is turning 75 this week. We give you a look at his world behind bars and the people who, believe it or not, still follow him to this day. First up tonight, the terror trial announced today by Attorney General Eric Holder. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind of the September 11th attacks, is going to be tried in a federal court in New York, along with 4 other 9/11 suspects. And we all remember this picture taken of Mohammed just after his capture in Pakistan back in March of 2003. Who can forget that image? He was held in secret prisons run by the CIA and then transferred to Guantanamo Bay in 2006. Take a look now, a more recent photo taken at Guantanamo. During interrogations at a military hearing, Mohammed allegedly took full credit for orchestrating the 9/11 attacks, but he was also waterboarded 183 times in U.S. custody. Defense attorneys will no doubt use that fact to try to keep key evidence out of court. Mohammed also allegedly claimed he personally decapitated kidnapped Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl in Pakistan. The beheading, of course, was videotaped. Today's announcement comes as the Obama administration is scrambling to meet deadlines on how to deal with the remaining prisoners at Guantanamo. President Obama, who's traveling in Asia, signed an executive order in January to close the prison within a year. Now, today, a lot of Republicans and conservatives blasted Mr. Obama's decision. They call it dangerous, short-sighted, said it was taking the country back to September 10th when this country had its guard down. Some also said it was cowardly of his administration to make the announcement while Mr. Obama was in Asia so he wouldn't have to answer his critics. Now, we should point out that the idea of trying terrorists in courts didn't come out of thin air. In fact, keeping them honest, back in May of 2006, President Bush himself said he, too, would like to close Guantanamo and put terrorists on trial in America. Listen.
We would like to end the Guantanamo. We'd like it to be empty. And we're now in the process of working with countries to repatriate people. But there are some that, if put out on the streets, would create grave harm to American citizens and other citizens of the world, and therefore I believe they ought to be tried in courts here in the United States.
Attorney General Holder also announced today that another set of high-profile detainees will be tried before military commissions. One of those suspects is accused of planning the 2000 bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen. Now, we don't take sides on this program. We try to present multiple points of view so you can make up your own mind. Joining me now is senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin, also national security analyst Peter Bergen, Joe Johns, and Kirk Lippold, who was the commander of the USS Cole when it was attacked by suicide bombers. Jeff, you say this may become one of the biggest challenges the federal courts have ever faced. How so?
Absolutely. Think about the different problems bringing this case to trial. Can you get a fair jury just blocks away from ground zero? Can you have security that makes everyone feel like this is not a battle zone in lower Manhattan? How do you deal with the fact that he was tortured? What happens to the evidence? What happens to the statements that he made? Can you turn over in discovery material highly classified information that will undoubtedly come up in this trial to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is one of the most dangerous people in the world? What risks do you take to national security to disclose this information? All of that has to be dealt with by one judge, one set of lawyers for the prosecution, one group of defense lawyers, and it's not clear that it can be done. It probably can be, but it's not a sure thing.
Lots to talk about. Joe, you've been talking to a lot of well-known defense attorneys, prosecutors. What do they make of this decision?
You know, the opponents, Anderson, are simply not polite about it. I did talk to a number of people who actually used to work in the justice system. Among them, Joe DeGeneva, a former Republican United States attorney from the District of Columbia. He called this thing idiotic and mind-bogglingly reckless, an invitation to attack the United States. Bruce Fein was a Republican who came out of the Reagan Justice Department. He had a little bit of a different take on it. He said this was simply an over-exaggeration of the danger to show people we've got to stay in Afghanistan. And on the other hand, though, if you talk to people who favor the decision, they're more skeptical of the notion of the military actually holding commissions or trials or whatever. Talk to Jim Benjamin, who's a former prosecutor out of the Southern District of New York, and he's actually wrote a study on how prosecutors do this. He said, our courts have demonstrated that they're capable of handling cases like this. The results are credible, reliable, and fair. On a practical level, he asks, are the other systems, like the military commissions or whatever, going to work? Are they going to be accepted as credible, especially overseas, Anderson?
Kirk, you were the commander of the USS Cole at the time of the attack on it. You helped the Joint Chiefs of Staff craft its current detainee policy. Should these men be tried in federal court?
I don't believe they should, Anderson. I think that military commissions clearly were recognized today as being a proper venue for trying these terrorists down in Guantanamo Bay. To split them between two systems doesn't make much sense. And in fact, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should have stayed down there, because it's been proven after numerous legal challenges during the Bush administration and with revisions that we recently have, that military commissions process will work fairly, and they will get the fair hearing that they deserve.
And you're saying it should be a military court because, what, these were participants in a war?
I do. I believe that this was an act of war, both the attack on USS Cole and the attacks of 9/11. And you have to look at the evidence that was gathered. Everyone likes to point to the previous cases, saying we successfully prosecuted them. The reality of it is the evidence gathered in those previous cases was done with an evidentiary standard that they would be introduced into the federal court system. In the case of USS Cole and especially 9/11, much of the evidence that was gathered was done post 9/11, where there was a war footing on, and that the evidentiary standards were not necessarily met for introduction into those court systems, whereas they could be successfully prosecuted under the military commission system.
Peter Bergen, what do you think is behind this decision to try some suspects in federal courts instead of military commissions?
Well, look, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh, the operational commanders of 9/11, is probably one of the easiest cases you could possibly imagine, because they admitted the whole plot when they weren't even in American custody. They went on Al Jazeera, they gave 2 days of interviews, they laid out exactly how they planned it, how they communicated with the hijackers in the United States, how they selected the targets, how they trained the 19 hijackers. It's all out there. This is long before they were in custody, long before anybody was coerced or waterboarded or any of the above. In a sense, this is one of the easiest cases in history to try. Jeffrey, of course, has pointed out all the various problems, but from a factual point of view, this is extremely easy. And, you know, we've had cases that are similar. The U.S. Embassy cases involved more than 200 people being killed, tried in the same courtroom. Everybody involved got life without parole. They ended up in Supermax, Florence, Colorado prison, which makes Guantanamo look like a Sunday picnic. And these guys may not end up in Supermax. They may be executed. After all, Eric Holder is going to pursue the death penalty with these guys.
I want to get Kirk's reaction to that and our other panelists, but just stay with us, guys. We've got to take a quick break. I want to know what you think at home as well. Should these folks be put on trial here in New York? Join the live chat now underway at AC360.com. I've already logged on. Our panel is going to be back after the break, as I said. You can also text your questions and thoughts to our panelists at AC360 or 22360.